Yeah,
the guy with the RPG.
RPG.
He tried to come up and shoot at us, and then I remember his head popping up over that, and I smashed him right in the head. He went down.
And a lot of people don't realize that we're going to have plenty of time or whatever. There's never enough time.
And then all of a sudden I hear Bremer say, "Stop bullshitting me, Sanchez. What the fuck is going on down there? I need to know an essay right now."
But Hacksaw gets out of the bird, takes his helmet off, and he says, "God damn it." He said, "As soon as I heard that," he goes, I knew you were going to be balls deep in this shit." I said, "We didn't start it." And he goes, "I just did a flyby." He says, "It sure as hell looks like you guys finished it."
All right, this is a cool podcast. It just so happens that this is the first podcast with a guest since last season. So this is season 2 officially, and it's cool. It's an awesome opportunity because this just happened about a week ago, and you're gonna meet White Boy here in a second. But last week I got a friend that told me, "Hey, I'm a guy named White Boy says hi," and I'm like, White Boy," and I found out that it was somebody that I knew 20 years ago, and the last time I saw you was when we left in our little birds from Najaf, and then 20 years later, to almost the day, you show up here in Scottsdale looking for a house, and we link up, and we've been hanging out for the last few days together, and with the 20-year anniversary of the Battle of Najaf coming up here in a few days, which will, by the time this probably launches, I thought it was a no-brainer to do this talk with you. So White Boy, man, it's been awesome in the last couple of days, reminiscing and talking about our lives, where we are now, which I think is what we'll end up talking about here, and then kind of going in reverse. But first and foremost, you got to explain the White Boy, because I remember hearing that, like, White Boy over the net back in Iraq, and all I knew is that you guys needed some help, and then here we are figuring out why White Boy.
So anyway, born in the UK, actually, British mother, American father, serviceman.
I didn't know that.
So came over to the States, Fort Bliss, Texas, then Pennsylvania. So I'm a pretty good athlete, whatever, young kid. So stick and ball sports, Pennsylvania, it's football, it's wrestling, it's boxing. There is no baseball, there is no lacrosse. It's just blue collar stuff. And you've got all those immigrant families, Irish and English, and you got the Germans and the Polacks and the Guineas, and it's everywhere. And so anyway, if you were pretty good in these little pickup games, you would get picked. And basketball was kind of my thing. I played 2 sports, really, basketball and football. And I was an okay athlete, but all the guys that played and ran track and field in the inner city track meets, they're all the black and mulatto kids. So if, inner city track meet, if I could get a third, that's a big win for me. And I got to know the guys. So anyway, we're playing 5-on-5 full court, nighttime. I'm the only white kid. They don't pass me the ball. I got to steal it and get a rebound. And, it's all scrappy shit. We take a break. We're going to get a drink of water, and we're going to run it back. And so I just said to them, and some of the kids were probably a little bit older than me. I said, "Hey, it's, you guys can pass me the ball. It's not like you can't see me out here." And everybody just started giggling and laughing. We're kids. Hey, check out the funny White Boy or whatever. So it just went from 11th and Pike basketball to the Olivets Boxing Club, and then the inner city track meet. And so it was White Boy. So then fast forward, joined the military. My last name's White Boy.
Just stuck, huh?
And it just stuck like, shit on a shingle. It just did.
That's probably one of the longest running call signs I've probably heard of.
I'm going to be 64. So yeah.
Yeah.
And then here's the funny part, as the teams and the whole military kind of shifted right before I got out, I just changed it to Whiskey Bravo on the radio because, the whole PC thing was.
Yeah, people didn't understand.
Well, yeah. It was hard, but here we go. I'm a controller on a USNS ship out in Virginia. We're doing some boat and helo work or whatever. So I was the ops guy for a while. I tore my knee up, so I'm out there. I'm the controller, right? So somebody said something about me on the radio with the White Boy thing or whatever. So the master comes out, older gentleman, and says, "Chief, you got a minute?" So we go out in the bridge wing, close the door. It was just like Captain's Mass all over again. I'm thinking, what did we do? Nothing happened. What's wrong? And he says, hey, that call sign that you use on the radio. And I said, hey, look, I can be safety one. I can be Batman. I can be whatever you want to be. And he goes, well, how long have you had that call sign? So I relate that story. And he says, you know what? He goes, it's your op and it's your radio and it's your call sign. It's my fucking ship. End of story. And I'm like, right on, here we go. And so then I transitioned to kind of the Whiskey Bravo thing. But, and then overseas, even some of the contractor guys that work at BW and Triple Canopy, they don't know my Christian name.
Yeah, I never did until you came here.
Yeah,
20 years later.
So it works, and
that's why I always say, like, somebody asked me earlier, hey, do you know so and so? I'm like, what was his call sign?
Yep.
Because that's where we typically went by a lot.
SHOT Show. A guy named Gonzo, who was on the Mambas, Air Force security guy, good dude. We're at the SHOT Show. Hey, I'm trying to introduce him to Denise, and I don't know the lads, and it's Anthony. I don't know his first name.
Yeah.
It's just kind of the way,
It's weird.
I think it's a good way of doing business.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't say sir in the airport when you're in civilian clothes. You really don't know who's listening and watching.
That's right.
So I know, and the funny thing is with those nicknames, everybody gets one and you don't get to pick it. So the big guy is Tiny, and then you got Pork Chop, and the list goes on and on.
Well, I want to go back into history here. What have you been doing lately, and just previous to that, and then because last time we talked, you're in the contracting world and the Navy before that, so
yeah, going backwards, which I like working left logistically. Not many people can do it.
No, it's normally reminiscent on the past, like
you end up back there and you never get out of back there.
We call that an illusion and separation of identity, by the way. And it messes a lot of guys up, I think. It does, because you stay stuck and you can't move past your own self that you remember back then. And it's like
your own stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot like you, working for different companies, and I realized that just making other people money, didn't like it. Did that anti-piracy thing when that was hot and heavy. Great money, but didn't get to blast anybody, and kind of, I've been carrying a rifle or a gun in my hand for, close to 40 years.
Did you ever get to drop a refrigerator on anybody? That was hilarious when you told me about that.
So no refrigerators, no barbecues with the homemade napalm and things like that.
If you don't have guns on a ship, you got other things. That's
adapt and overcome.
That's the point of that.
That's the whole piece. And that's, special operations service wide.
Improvise, overcome.
Adapt and overcome. If you don't have something, figure it out. When we were talking about just the other night, low tech beating high tech.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of low tech out there, Ukraine, Gaza, whatever. So before that, working with a shooting place out in California, shooting on an Indian reservation, so kind of skirting some of the crazy California laws, but it got so bad in California as things were just progressing or whatever. And then met my girl. She hired me as a carbine instructor. She put on this another 40-year anniversary thing at Gunsight. I'm the carbine guy. Rob Latham, from right down here in Mesa, is the pistol guy, and another blade guy. So we called that 200 yards of bad breath. So, which I thought was cool. That. And the lethality of 5.56, anything past 240, 50, 60 yards, questionable at best. I'm a 30 caliber guy.
Oh yeah, of course.
So, but anyway, little bits and pieces, but I just got tired of working for other companies and other people, whether they're team guys or not. I thought of myself as a pretty good instructor. And as you watched other people trying to teach and failing miserably, and teaching law enforcement guys and watching who their training sergeants are and watching those guys stumble around, it was almost painful. And whether it's misplaced loyalty or whatever, but you remember, especially on the East Coast there, we had a training budget that was pretty impressive. I went to almost every shooting school in America, the Clint Smith, Bill Rogers. We went down to Shaw's Place a million times. Jerry Barnhart.
Yeah, Burner. He would come up a lot.
Yeah, the Burner. So knowing what those guys kind of imparted in me or whatever, and I really started paying attention to how they teach, what they did with a gun, with an MP5, with a carbine, whatever, and phenomenal shooters, you know. And again, if you could run a course of fire and get within 3/4 of a second of Jerry Barnhart, you're doing something. I mean, but Jerry Barnhart's not a frogman. You know, he's not jumping out of the space shuttle at 30,000 feet. He's not, you know, locking out of a submarine with a rebreather and stuff. So as I moved into that gun world, and I used to hate that because in the teams they always said, well, the guys who can't do it are going to teach. And I thought, well, that's horrible. Why would you take a substandard operator and put him as a trainer? He should be the guy. Your trainer guys should be some of your best guys, you know, the mentor kind of thing. And in bits and pieces it was, but there were a lot of places where it wasn't.
Still, I mean, majority of law enforcement is still that way.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
It's horrible. So what I've tried to do in my little world, whether it's California or now it's here, is impart some of that. I tell some of the people on the range, Uncle Sugar spent a lot of money on me. Now, three SEAL teams, 3 surgeries. I think he got his money's worth. But to impart some of that, whether they're law enforcement guys or just the average civilian out here, whether they're doing their constitutional carry or whatever, and they're, you know, Second Amendment guy. I don't have the Second Amendment tattooed on my forehead, but I think it's a big part of American society, and it's a big part of who we are. I mean, if you want to go into that rabbit hole, all I just tell people is, if you know your American history, the country was built on religion and guns. So without the guns, there's no freedom of religion. So stop talking.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
So
if I can add to that for just a second, because I've been having a lot of conversations about this with the Second Amendment, and there's a lot of people that will probably, you know, even watch this podcast because of our history together in that small couple days out of our entire careers, right? Which we'll get into that later. You know, we'll say, oh, you guys, like, if something ever bad happens, you're just going to serve your old masters. And I always say, you're goddamn right, I will, because last time I checked, our masters is the first 3 words in the Constitution. So you're damn right. I'm going to serve my masters. And I think that's what you're saying, is like, it's the Second Amendment, right, the history, and a lot of people will live off of that. And I've been trying to do some research studies, and I did some studies on Switzerland recently. Actually, Greg and I were talking about it, and then started stemming into our training teams and everything. And we realized a difference between like Switzerland's culture and our culture, right? They're gun cultures in a sense, but what's the difference? We have a Second Amendment. They don't, right? But they shoot every weekend. They do competitions. We're going to do some competition stuff there this summer. And I realized that the difference is they still have a sense of duty. So it's not just about God and guns. It's also the sense of duty that came with God and guns. And I think if we can start getting that back as Americans, you know, people will start working together instead of creating this common enemy intimacy of well, you're going to just serve your old masters, or you're a mercenary, like, you know, what we talked about earlier at lunch, and then or you're just, you know, like I even get now, like, you're going to let your son join the military? Like, you're damn right. Because if you think it's a broken system, then maybe we should put good people into it. And my son's probably the best person that could do it. So anyways, I just want to throw out the sense of duty aspect. I think is why, you know, it's definitely why you do what you do and why I do what I do. And so I think if we can impart that on Americans, it doesn't matter if you're a gun-toting American or a cop or a military guy, you still should have a sense of duty for the Constitution of the United States, which is we the people.
Well,
you know, and serves us.
That's a pretty hot topic this year. And, I'm not going to turn this into a political discussion. That's not me. I've got a bullet in my eval. You know, when I was a platoon chief over to Sarajevo, we augmented the Secret Service counter sniper element. We had a 300 Win Mag and a 50 cal, and my guys were on the roof, and it was Bill Clinton. So I asked the Secret Service guy, the comms is a mess. So we've got some D-boys, SF guys, my little mini platoon light, kind of a squad heavy, Secret Service guys. So different radios, different crypto, whatever. So I'm next to the counter sniper guy. So I'm just, you know, we had a couple of moments. There's nothing happening. I said, so how is that, you know, Mr. Agent Man making the big money? And I think I called him Slick Willie. And he said, well, he looked right at me. He says, I protect the office of the presidency of the United States of America. And Bill Clinton is a tenant, and his lease is soon up. And that That's all I have to say.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't say another word for a good hour.
Yep. Their leases always have to be up.
Yeah.
Even with the corruption and fraud and whatever you want to call it, the lease will eventually expire.
Yep. So anyway, I think that sense of duty, I tell people, well, yeah, my son's thinking about joining the military, and now because the teams have been in the newspapers and the movies and the books, and that's a whole other subject. And I tell people, well, there's a lot worse things you can do than serve your country. And I just leave it at that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like, well, and this is when, it was still going hot and heavy over in the sandbox. And they're like, well, what if he goes over there? I said, if little Johnny goes over there, he's never going to be little Johnny again.
That's for sure.
So back east, I went to a thing, guy in my high school. Quick little story. All I knew is his old man got killed in Vietnam. 30 years later, Freedom of Information Act. He was an Air Force guy that was way up on the Laotian border, almost just about touching the Chinese border, a big radar site up there. Anyway, base gets overrun. Overnight, they're in a cave. They're throwing grenades back and forth. He's got an AK-47, and he's a Air Force Chief Master Sergeant. Last guy to get on, because they couldn't fly at night back then. This is 67, I believe, early days. And last guy to get in the last helo, takes one through the side, into the lung, bleeds out in a helicopter. Got the Medal of Honor. 30 years later, so I show up, and there were guys in PA. They had a handful of World War II guys, or World War I. Then the two guys was probably two handfuls, maybe three. And then Korea guys, the Vietnam guys, and then Desert Storm, and all the way through. And it was a lineup of about 75 dudes. Pretty impressive. So that sense of duty, whatever, that kind of leads into that whole mercenary thing. And that's why I did, to give Ryan Fugit a plug on Combat Stories, I tried to set the record straight because there had never been a TF Blue guy who had been a contractor overseas doing that kind of work. And I tried to not throw people under the bus, but just like, look. And there was a lot of us, I thought, that were pretty good Joes at the time. We had some pretty good skills. Maybe we were out over our skis a little bit, but like you said, we didn't have a whole lot of help. We didn't have a whole lot of resupply. We didn't have a lot of things that you would have on the active duty side.
Yeah.
And but when it came down to it, we got shit done.
Well, I think that goes, it's like big problem I see today is people always rely on resources, and you have to be resourceful. And I think that's why we did such a good job, because we didn't have anything. I remember going out and buying guns and like gas stations and weird shit in Iraq. A lot of the teams had to do that couldn't get weapons in time. They eventually got there, but it was really weird out of the gate. And everything was improvised. Everything
had to be.
It had to be. And so I think that's where they had a good crew of guys that came in, and you never heard the term mercenary ever.
No.
Ever. And so I know a lot of people still throw that around as a derogatory term, but it was extremely derogatory to us, because I know I was still active in the reserves as a active force recon Marine, while serving overseas.
You're a gunny sergeant.
So I'm sitting there, I've got the same political considerations I still care about. I got the American flag on my sleeve, and then people later started saying, "Hey, well, you're a merc," and I'm like, that's not what we did. A mercenary is somebody that is doing this out of their own,
executive outcomes.
Yeah, exactly. And those were the soldiers in Africa, as you know, is like killing is power, right? So those guys went in and did great historical missions, and some good, some bad, whatever, and they were labeled that mercenary, a soldier for hire. But they wouldn't go around saying I'm a merc. They'd say I'm a soldier for hire. And then all of a sudden it started getting this label on us, where a lot of us were either reservist, guard guys on my teams, or guys that served a career like you in the military. And we're over there trying to still put foot to ass for our country and the coalition and the people we care about, and be able to have our own schedules. I was deployed so much, I came home to a 8-year-old son that looked at mom and said, "Mom, who's that?" when I walked in the door. And I'm like, okay, maybe I should slow down and start making my own schedule. But I still want to do this, so contracting was a great opportunity at the time. And I think a lot of guys were in that boat, especially guys that got out of the military a little early. And I think in today's world, there's still that that misunderstanding of that term, and it has to be, because there's still guys in the world that are doing those types of jobs.
There always has been.
Yeah, and there always will be. But what is the intention, I think, is the key word of the person that's going over and do that. Because if we had a mercenary mentality in our teams, like in Baghdad or some of the other places I contracted, you were weeded out within 5 minutes. We knew you were not good. Because I don't want to sit there and all of a sudden one day feel a knife in my back and turn around and see a guy that's only in it for his own personal gain, which is the definition of a mercenary. And so they didn't last very long at all.
Remember what I said at lunch? There's no I in team, but there sure is a
There's
me.
a me.
So I have, and then that moves into the bigger story of, all the guys that are writing books and doing movies and all that stuff. And I get it.
What do you think about that?
Well, in the immortal words of my buddy Monty Tresage, the way I see it, they're making money off my dead friends.
Oof. Yeah.
How about that? Because I know a whole bunch of guys, former teammates, that have 12, 18 combat deployments, have done all kinds of stuff. And they've got their dojo back on the East Coast, or they've got their little shooting school, or they're just retired. And they're not on the 5 o'clock news bumping their gums at 100 miles an hour. So
is it because it's too soon? Like, I mean, if my grandfather, who told me stories of World War II over and over and over to try to, I guess, educate me, motivate me, inspire me, or whatever, I felt like that was awesome to hear those things. And today you can't throw a stick without hearing a story, And I know I've had my balls busted for it too, even celebrating like this week.
Yep.
It's like, no, it's historic preservation, but there's a lot of things that are said, I think, that maybe are untrue that guys get pissed off about. And that's where now you're really making money, not just on telling a story because you can make a quick buck on my dead friends, but you're doing it and the stories aren't even necessarily factual. I think that's pissed a lot of guys off as well.
So between Iraq and Afghanistan, whole global war on terror, we're talking about over 2.5 million servicemen. So that's Marines, Army guys, Spec Ops guys, Coast Guard guys. How is it that everybody was over there doing all these things? I don't remember seeing all those guys doing all those great things. So, and again, my world was pretty small. One of the reasons, and here's one that I haven't said. When I first got recruited to come to BW, before that was the Gaza experiment for me. So, coming from that, I had a kind of a hard taste in my mouth. They blow up the truck, kill half the team after I left, so that'll put a scar on you. And then I thought, oh yeah, here we go. We're going to go to Iraq, and I'm going to get even. Well, what I was told a long time ago, do not let your emotions make tactical decisions for you. It always ends up bad. And that was, I was really lucky when I showed up as a new guy at Team 1. There were still a couple handfuls of the Vietnam vets guys around. And they had, I think, let's see, most of the dudes were 7s and 8s, maybe 9s. They got in some trouble here and there. Claude Willis was the Command Master Chief, Senior E9. He had 33. He had 11 rows of combat ribbons.
Jesus.
5 tours of Vietnam as a point man. 5 tours.
As a point man.
As a point
That's
man.
not a thing.
Yeah, carried Ithaca model 37.
Yeah.
So those kind of guys, you see him in the mess hall, and he's a little black guy out of Louisiana, and his Budweiser, his Trident's up on his shoulder, and you're looking across the mess hall, and I'm going, okay, that's 3 per row, 1, 2, 3. And I'm like, wow. And he doesn't, thinking, okay, wow, check that dude out. So that's impressive. So when those guys talk about how to carry grenades or how you should have your kit set up or what you should do during ambush drills or whatever, you're paying attention.
Yeah.
Like, okay, here it is. This is the real deal. So I was really fortunate. And a couple of those guys, I was never a really, not the most skilled guy. I just figured that I was just going to outwork everybody. Pennsylvania, blue collar shit.
Yeah.
So, and I damn near tried. I'm in some cases maybe succeeded or whatever, but I used a lot of that. And then I go over to Iraq, and I'm with my old Sea Daddy George, who did 2 tours and got out as an 8, and he ran the range out at Nyland, out there in California, and he put me through my first AK class, my first PK class, my first RPG-7 and RPG-2 class, my first demo ambush class. The first couple times we we're playing with claymores, they are just on the other side of the wash, 12 feet away. And there's a reason they do that.
Where they're supposed to be.
Yeah. And you want to be tight.
Not anymore. You don't see that training a lot.
No. Different era, different rules, different whatever.
Well, people need to study that era because guess what's starting to happen right now? Equipment, everything that we do here is starting to go back to that. People are going, hey, we need more this thing where we have like suspenders and we can put canteens and stuff on. I'm like, yeah, I remember those days.
Oh, yeah. Well, and then we just had 2 guys lose their life over there in the Red Sea.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, 20 years in the desert, they lost a lot of that maritime interdiction, TTP, because you're doing truck stuff and you're doing this long range mobility stuff. And now all of a sudden you get out in the big puddle and a lot of those basic SOPs have been lost. And somebody needs to get those lessons learned out and get those books out and get in the pool, get your trim set, whether you're diving, swimming, whatever. If you're on the water, you better have positive flotation.
Yeah.
If you hit the water and you're unconscious, nobody's pulling CO2, nothing.
Yeah.
You're gone. So I see things now as I'm at the other end of the tube looking back this way.
Perspective, not perception anymore.
I was very, very fortunate to work with some of those guys. And then, the old Team 6 plank owner guys, I mean, you want to talk about phenomenal operators. I mean, they just live, eat, and breathe guns. That's it. Everything is blowing stuff up and going through the door. And those guys, I thought I was a pretty good operator when I went out there. And I got out there and I went, wow, okay. We were on the JV team. And this is what you got high school, stick and ball sports, football, high school, collegiate. The NFL guys are 1/10 of 1%. Those guys are just, you and I are not going to see another guy like Bo Jackson on the planet in our lifetime. That's one of one. 235-pound guy runs he ran a 4.18 on a hand watch down at Auburn in just shorts. 4.18. And he was probably 220 back then. That is moving.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was kind of my litmus test or whatever, working with guys like that. And they took everything real serious. The PT was serious.
Even after they were out, I remember sitting there, like we were talking about Denny Chalker, man. I used to skydive with him down in Notai Lakes, and we'd sit there all day, and I just listened to him. And because he took it seriously, even when he was out. And he motivated me a lot in the soft goods because he was working for a company at the time that was comparable. But yeah, it was interesting.
Denny's no joke.
No,
he's a real deal.
Hell no. Yeah, he was an incredible man. Still is. But yeah, it's cool listening to those guys. And I wish that could come back in today's world. But
well, unfortunately, you and I now, because of what's happening in our age, we are now transplanting. Those guys are all getting really long in the tooth. And now, hopefully, somebody listens to us because
history is important. Yeah.
Well, and again, frogman luck. I got all my fingers, all my toes. I've done more than some, less than some, somewhere in the middle, but I've been really goddamn lucky.
Yeah.
But I'm a big believer in you make your own luck. And again, I saw guys, right after, you would just go right back to it. The big litmus test over there for, I think, most of the BW guys, everything was going fairly smooth, like you said. And then you got the Fallujah thing, and all of a sudden you got some teammates hanging off a bridge like Christmas ornaments.
I flew one of those guys down there that morning before that. Yeah.
Scotty Helveston lived up in Carlsbad, California.
Yeah.
He was at Team 5 when I was at 1. So
we dropped. I think it was Jerry, one of the guys that
Jerry's
I think he was an old and he was an old Ranger, I guess. So he says, or something like that, Army guy. And we took him in, and he had no idea what he was getting into because that was a hodgepodge team put together. And another story for another time potentially. But and the next day we're like, wait, what? The hell? The guy was just in a helicopter with me. So and then it was on. It was on at that point.
So fast forward. That day we come back from lunch down in Najaf, and I never told you this story. This will be interesting. So I was never supposed to be the team leader down there. I went from Baghdad. Brian, remember, the mass chief, was in-country manager at the time. I got moved off one project, so I went down to Karbala, did the advance down there with Mookie, and I was working with some Bulgarian SF guys or whatever, put that together. K2 showed up with his team, so I did the turnover with those guys, showed them a little bit of the ropes or whatever. Right after I leave, big mosque up the street from one of the CPA places, 6 suicide bombers, bang, bang, bang. I drive down in Najaf, so I'm doing the same thing down there. I'm working with those El Salvadoran guys that got the Bronze Stars and putting that team together and trying to get the lay of the land down there. So the new team shows up. Well, there's a former Marine who's the team leader, and he says his resume is Tommy Franks, shift leader. Well, he's actually the midnight shift leader, which means he turns on the Proxima and he makes the coffee in the morning. Mm-hmm. And anyway, not the right guy. So again, we come back from lunch, and I don't know if you remember Lionel. He was one of the contractors down there on Phil's staff.
Lionel,
82nd Airborne, thin guy, always smoking 100 cigarettes. Anyway, come back from lunch, and he says, "White boy, walk with me." I'm like, "Here we go again." And so we're walking. He says, "Hey, the boss really likes you." And we had just done a move where we took the other guy down to Kuwait City. He flew out, so now Phil's in charge. And that was really a good thing, I believe. One of the reasons that we had some success, because we had some real leadership and some positive input. And so Lionel and I are walking, and he says, Phil used to be Bremer's deputy at one point.
Yeah.
So he's like, "Hey, Phil really likes your style, likes your leadership, and He's, what do you think about the new team?" I said, "Hey, you got some good guys." And he says, "Well, we're not really sure about the new team lead." Kind of wink, wink, wink. And he says, I said, "Tell you what," I said, what do you want me to do? You want me to take over the team?" And Lionel goes, "Absolutely." I said, "Okay, done deal. I'll get on the phone, talk to Brian. He'll go back to Baghdad, and I'll just stay. How's that?" Great. So I get on the phone. I remember Goldberg was my 2IC, semi-pro, big yoked up dude. So I call him, and I think we're in his trailer. I said, "All right, here's what's happening. Skippy's leaving. You're the 2IC. I'm taking over the team." He's like, "Right on." And then he goes, "How did all that happen?" I said, "You're about to see it." I get the sat phone out. Brian gave me, an agency phone. So go outside. "Hey, Brian, hey, the new team lead's not working out. So I'm just going to run it. He's going back." Well, I thought when he went back to Baghdad, I thought he ended up on that Fallujah team, and he was one of the guys hanging off the bridge. So I was in a panic to get those names. And remember, the names didn't come out right away. It was all, they wanted to notify next of kin and so I'm down there thinking, I just called, so there was a moment there of, sending a guy to his death. That's not a great thing. So
right.
When people talk to me on the range or whatever, and like even today, this thing we did this morning there, the one guy's like, "Hey, really great job," or something. And I said, "No." I said, "The great job that I've done is I brought all my people home with all their fingers and all their toes. Not me." So that's the kind of thing I think that's lost in a lot of this.
Yeah, that's why I love this story, because you have a completely different perspective, and I guess just getting into the whole Najaf thing, since it is a 20-year anniversary, and who knows, we may never talk about it again, externally, but internally, I know we'll always think about it. And I know you and I have had a lot of conflicts. We've been in a lot of combat operations. But that was just a unique
Hostile
one.
fire zones.
Hostile fire zones.
That's what they call it. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. I'm sure they'll have an acronym for it too. And it's interesting, because I know I had a perspective sitting on, because I was on office watch with Ambassador Bremer at the time, because he'd had to rotate out up in Baghdad. And then you guys are down south. We were all fresh and hot and bothered about the bridge hanging. And I knew because I had just flown down there with those guys, and we knew about the team. There's a lot of scuttlebutt about it up in Baghdad, and we're like, damn, they got hit. They took the same route, whatever it was, and so now we're like, something's going down. Well, then of course, fast forward into the 2nd or 3rd of April. I think it was right before the big day it kicked off. Our perspective, and I know a lot of people don't know what happened up there. They just hear about this gunfight down in Najaf. But there was some weird tensions, and that's what I think I wanted to talk to you about after all these years is, some guys well, I should say a lot of guys have called this the Benghazi of Iraq. And it's like, it's because we, and I remember seeing some weird things up there with the head shed, and arguments and fisticuffs going back and forth with Bremer and the coalition's, commander, General Sanchez.
Plenty of that
Rumsfeld,
going
Rice is back and forth in and out of the office constantly. The big red phone's ringing. I'm hearing him, getting screamed at by Bush at certain times. And, and you could feel the energy just getting heated up. And then all of a sudden we start getting calls of Najaf. And I'm on the watch and I hear this, hey, we got something really bad going on down there. I'm kind of like, oh shit, that sucks, and I'm a bad Baghdad contractor. We're not getting involved. Like, I got to protect this guy on this detail here. And
that's 100 miles south.
100 miles south, and that's not happening, So we never even had the thought that any of this was going to go down. Right. And then we start getting word that, hey, it's getting hotter. So then you see General Sanchez coming in and out of the office, and he's like, sir, it's fine. They're all pulling back to, what was it, Baker? No, it was Gulf and Baker, right? And then most of the people pulled back or something. Then by the time information was relayed back and forth, especially your call, I remember Frank and a couple of guys talking about, hey, white boys saying that they're not doing well. They're this. Now you can speak to that part, but and then I hear Sanchez come back in, and there were some derogatory comments back and forth to each other, and I'm just like, holy shit, this is actually happening, and right in front of me, and then all of a sudden I hear Bremer say, stop bullshitting me, Sanchez. What the fuck is going on down there? I need to know an essay right now. And he's like, sir, they're a bunch of fucking contractors. They're making a big deal out of it. They're just hotheads and want to get some trigger time. He goes, don't listen to them. And he's talking about you at this point, now that I put all these pieces together.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, and he points at me in the corner. And as he's saying this, and I'm like, you have no idea. And so that's when he leaves. And then we got another scratchy call from him. I remember comms were broken. Yeah. And that's when Bremer's like, Travis, I was like, sir. He's like, get your boss in here. And so Frank comes in, and he says, look, I'm authorizing you by any means necessary. And when I say any means necessary, I mean any means necessary to go in and help and figure out what the hell's going on and give these guys some support no matter what. And like, they're like, you mean like with the Little Bird crew? Because that's his aircraft.
That's his baby.
That's his squadron. Like, we don't touch that. And all of a sudden you're going to authorize us? Like, and of course, I think we kind of felt this and looked at each other, and it's like, you can't authorize contractors to offensively engage in combat operations because that's against the Geneva Convention. And so that came up, and he said, I am authorizing you. I'm going to be writing I forget what the hell it was called, but some an addendum to that, to where you will be protected in the event you have to offensively engage to be able to help these people. And he goes, we can't allow that CPA to be taken. And so then it goes to, I think that's when Frank turned to me and he goes, you ready? And I was like, you don't have to ask me twice, man. And I think I sprinted so fast across that palace, and the palace was huge, right?
That's a long way to go.
I remember it take like 11 minutes just to walk across it.
HLZ Washington.
Yeah. And so I haul ass back to, I think I actually ran across the street to HLZ Washington, told the air crew, hey guys, get your shit together. We might be getting called hot. And that's when Steve and everybody, Hack and all those guys were moving around and trying to get things planned. I sprint back to the ready room, start grabbing shit. And I remember looking down at that counter sniper rifle that I shared on the advanced team every once in a while. Never shot it in my damn life, which was, as we know, and everybody out there will probably say, yeah, I don't know if I ever shot my actual rifle, and zeroed the damn thing. So that was a liability for us. But, we're thinkers and we can improvise really quickly in the event something happens. But I had just happened to grab that, jumped on the aircraft, and everybody's trying to jump on board the aircraft. I know a couple seats gotten taken off of my guys because I was kind of running the program on the birds at that point as far as the gunner program, and doing all the training and the POI development. And I got two of my gunners kicked off so other guys could go. And for good reason, those guys were good that were on that bird. But then other people try to jump in. I'm like, fucking no, we're going with what we got.
And halt.
And we had so much crap on those little birds. We had to throw shit out of them. Like, I think there was a case of frags I got thrown out and some other stuff because they were so heavy we could barely get off the ground to get down there to you guys.
Think about that statement. You threw a case of frags off the helicopter just to get off the ground, and you still got to go 100 miles.
Yeah.
And you have no idea.
No idea what we're getting into.
What you're getting into.
Yeah, and that
take
was,
it all, and you can't take it all.
Yeah.
So that's that prioritization. It's just like, priority of work inside a room that's just been taken or a structure that's just been taken.
Yeah.
There's a sequence of events. And And a lot of people don't realize that oh, we're going to have plenty of time or whatever. There's never enough time. You grab what you have and what you think you might need. My buddy Lucky, he's got a law rocket on his back and his rifle and his gear. Boom, away he goes. And he figures if he needs more than his rifle and his law rocket, he shouldn't have been there in the first place.
Yeah.
Kind of a crazy way to think of things.
Sure,
but,
sure. I remember you guys needed PKM ammo, and that weighted us down the most. We wanted to make sure we had the PKM stuff primarily. And I remember Hacksaw, the lead pilot there, and one of the baddest ass fucking pilots in the world
ever.
I mean, all the guys in TFs know who Hack is. And we were skidding the skids to try to get forward momentum so we could start taking off. And I don't think I've ever seen that helicopter, but we got up. We headed hauled ass fast as we could, full tilt boogie on those little birds down there. And we ended up stopping because we had no comms with anybody at this point. So now we're flying in blind for a while. We ended up stopping in Babylon at the FARP there, which is a fuel air resupply point. So we sat down, we're refueling the birds and just kind of sitting there going, all right, here we go. This is happening. There's no turning back at this point. And two 264s land, two Apaches. Yeah. And, pilot gets out. Of course, they know who Hacksaw is. Hey, dude, what's up, brother? What's up? And they hug, and they start chit-chatting and stuff. It's like, where y'all headed? We're like, we're going in Najaf to try to get our guys out. And he says, I wouldn't do that if I were you, Hack. And he's like, what the hell are you talking about? He goes, we just got pulled out of there for a reason. We don't know why. And I'm like, what the fuck? What do you mean you got pulled out? Why would Apaches get pulled out? He's like, it's hot. It's nasty right now. Mm-hmm. And that's all we're hearing from these Apache pilots. He goes, there's Vipers on station right now dropping, apparently. We don't know what they're... And so Hack, I remember saying, hey, give me the freaks to those Vipers so I can talk to them and tell them we're coming in hot, not to be dropping any damn ordnance as we're coming in on final. Oops. And he goes, Hack, I can't do that, man, because we're contractors. I get it, right? You can't just hand over military freaks, but, like, come on, brother. Well, I'm not going to say what happens, but they go around the back of the helicopter, and Hack comes back. He's like, all right, we're good. And I'm like, I'm not going to tell that part of the story, but he's like, let's go. And he goes, by the way, guys, nobody's going to hold anything against you. This is volunteer, like Bremer said. He goes, if anybody wants to back out right now, this is your last chance. You can stay here. We'll pick you up on the way back, or you can find a ride back to Baghdad if you need to, if something worse happens. And so, of course, everybody kind of looked at each other like, I fucking dare you to bow out, right? Yeah. But it was a brotherly thing. Like, we're not, and it wasn't because we wanted to get trigger time. I don't think anybody in that team that I looked around at their eyes.
It's a sense of mission.
There was a sense of duty and compassion there. And the compassion was because we heard from your voice, because that's the only thing we knew is that call was they may not make it through the night. Yep. And that's what drove us to.
We do not hold the night, is what I said. We don't have.
We don't hold the night. That's right. Yeah.
On that same agency sat phone.
Yep. And so we jumped in, and I think 17 minutes later we were over the top, and that's when a freaking that GBU or whatever the hell it was, that 500-pounder hit that building right beside me.
The big warehouse, yeah.
And I thought we got hit by a surface to air or something like that. So the Hack is like, whoa, and he's checking the pedals, and I'm like, hey, dude, everything looks fine. And I look out, I was like, whoa, the building just blew up. I don't know if it was an IED or something, but I thought somebody had shot an RPG or something at us.
Oh, it was bigger than an RPG.
And that's when we went into orbit, security, and then started dropping supplies to you guys. And then that's when I think somebody was saying like doing this to us. And I remember if it was Hack or Cat Daddy or somebody, which Cat Daddy was killed later, but we said, hey, we're going to set it down, see what the hell's going on, because we had no comms with you guys. We're just flying around circles, and we don't know if we're getting shot at or whatnot. And I think that's when that sniper was still in the hospital at that point when they were getting shot at.
When he took off.
Yeah, because I remember we were shooting as soon as we landed. That's when Mookie came up to me and said, he goes, hey, is that a sniper rifle? I was like, yeah. I said, dude, get that fucking thing up the roof right now. I said, oh, okay. And so I followed him and a bunch of guys up there, and that's when he said, hey, keep your head down. There was a sniper in that window, and he called the window out. And I remember there was a little bit of fire on that, so I think he was still somewhat consciously there, or in that.
Nobody has any idea, really.
No, hell no.
But from that window to where we were standing, where I was standing, it's a 125-yard shot.
Yeah, easy shot.
Yeah, it's not a sniper shot. I mean, all you gotta do is stick that AK out the window.
Yep. So with that's where we landed. Next thing you know, that was it. So, and that's where it goes fast forward. I start hearing a bunch of stories. I talked to a bunch of the pilots. I talked to a bunch of people in politics, a bunch of people in different government agencies after that, and it was kind of the consensus that we weren't supposed to go down there. obviously. And we went against all orders and regulations, and I don't think the coalition commanders would ever even think for 1 second that Bremer would have authorized us to go down to do that. And a lot of people have said this. I'm not personally saying this, but they said, y'all spoiled somebody's plan that day, because I don't think you guys were supposed to live through that. In my opinion, that's my personal opinion. I know it's a lot of other guys, even high dudes on the team and that were in Baghdad, that said, something weird there. And if you study Muqtada, al-Sadr, you study the Blotter, the Mahdi army, and the Iranian Shia, and even to the point from that day to now, the Houthi rebels in Iran and everything we're dealing with and trying to stabilize and take control of the economy in the Middle East again, it's a fucking shit show. And so, and I don't care. I even said in a video I did not too long ago, I don't care about any of that information. It wasn't the journey or the destination. It was the people in between, which I thought was so cool. Meeting you, man, just this week.
Yeah, nice way to say it.
Yeah.
That whole political thing, going back a little bit, right in between the Fallujah thing and our little soiree up there, that little 3.5 hour gunfight, there was a lady from Hilla, CPA lady named Fern. She's a local driver, just her. They were coming back from somewhere in one of those bogus checkpoints. Boom, shoot the driver. They drag her out in the field, bang. And so what I did learn kind of in my little education in international counterterrorism was I was pretty good at reading tea leaves. And just like you said, there were things changed right after that little gap of time, whatever that was, 10, 11 days between the Fallujah thing and when that kicked off down Najaf. There were all kinds of little things that were just, and just made that my spidey sense was going 1,000 miles an hour. And so one of the best things I thought I did at that particular time is right after the Fallujah thing, and then we heard about Fern, we went 50-50. So whether we were on a move or whether guys were going to lunch or whatever we were doing, guys working out, half the team was in kit, ready to go. The other guys, and then we swapped out. And that 50-50 security was probably been around since the days of the Romans or whatever. I don't know.
Typically, contractors didn't have to do 50-50 security unless you were actively on a mission or whatever. But then
there was something telling me that there was shit in the breeze, and so we come back from lunch when all the stuff was on CNN about the Fallujah hit, and then we come back from lunch. I'm in the back of that conference room. Remember where we had all the wounded guys were in process and everybody? That was their conference room. So we come back. The whole team's in the back of the conference room. And Phil's up there, and it's CNN, and and they're all listening to the news feed and all that stuff. So I'm watching, and we had gotten the names, and I knew Jerry, and I knew a couple of the other guys, not personally, but I knew who they were. I knew they were all BW guys. So Phil looks at me, and he always called me his security chief. Again, I never used my Christian name ever, and he says, Chief, you got something to say? I said, yes, sir. And I said, turn that shit off. So I walk up front, and I got in front. And so now it's a very mixed bag. So you got State Department people, State Department contractors, then you got regular contractors that are doing geo surveys and water, and everybody there is going to dig a well and build a school and all the rest of it. And so probably, I think there were 22 people in the class in that little. And I said, all right, folks, turn the TV off. I said, take a good look. I said, that's Iraq. I said, and that's right up the river. That's right up there. I said, so for some of you people that aren't wired for this shit, I suggest that you pack a bag and you get your passport, your money, your sensitive items, your gun, computer, everything, put it in a backpack, and I will get you out of here. Because that stuff is going to be down here lickety-split. Mm-hmm. And you could see everybody just trying to process that. And I don't know if they didn't believe me or whatever. State Department gal's got a Glock 19 out of the holster. She comes on, you got to teach me how to shoot. I put that thing in the holster, and I tried to explain to them they should have learned how to shoot a long time ago. And a lot of them, I don't think, maybe they got a bunch of, hot air up their fucking John Wayne hind parts. I don't know. But they were there for, I think a lot of those people, they had the right reasons, but they were in the wrong situation for sure. So, and as it turned out, fast forward, Little Birds are in the parking lot. Sanchez shows up with Kimmel. And then I come back into that conference room. I went out and talked to the crew chief, and I had those 260s sitting there. And I said, hey, how many, you got some extra seats? And he said, yeah, I can take about 10 or 12. I said, all right, cool. Go back in there. I said, hey, listen up. And there's blood on the floor and bullets everywhere. And you guys just hauled the wounded out of there. And people, it's late in the day, and people are wondering, what's going to happen at night. And that was my big concern, because we didn't have night vision. I think I had one pair of binoculars, and that was it. Mm-hmm. And we still hadn't got any kind of resupply on bullets and bombs or whatnot. I gave him the same speech. I said, you get one bag, all your sensitive items, gun, passport, money, computers, whatever you've got, throw it in that bag. You be here in 5 minutes. I can get you on that helicopter. And it looked like rats going off a sinking ship, man.
Oh, yeah.
They just exploded. So moral of the story, you and I have been through all those Cooper's colors and combat mindset and all that stuff. I had never actually seen all that happen to people right in front of my very eyes. Just people melting down, condition black, OBE, just done. And all that, you've heard all the, when the going gets tough, the tough get going, and all that. And that's all bullshit.
Yeah.
It really is. The human just defaults to his level of training. That's all he does. There's too much stuff going on. And again, I told you the other day, that whole first day, I never even fired my weapon. I was so busy trying to just get people in the right spot and get the wounded down and get the wounded out of there with you guys, and then get more stuff and get people, control people. Cause I've got that 22 person, menagerie or whatever you want to call it. It was like, it was almost like, imagine having a kindergarten class downstairs while all that's going on upstairs.
I couldn't imagine.
It was pretty nuts. But saw an officer, a reserve officer, underneath a desk in the hard room that's all sandbagged in, and he's on a radio. And I look at him and I said, "Who are you talking to on that radio?" And he's, "Oh, there's a sniper, get down, get down." And I said, "Who are you talking?" Because comms was, and what it was is they had a VHF link to Baker, who had long range comms, but that's one of the issues.
Which is about 20 clicks to the east, right? Is that what it was?
No, Baker was that little one that was just one click to the north.
Okay, that's right.
That was the comm site, and then Gulf was the CPA thing. But from Gulf to Baker to Hilla to Baghdad, it was a mess.
Yeah.
Anyway,
that's what's taking us so long to get comms back and forth to figure out what's going on. It was
all garbage. So this guy tells me, he says to me, he goes, "I have a relationship with God, and when this is over, you and I are going to be friends." So this is near the end of this 3.5 hour thing. I'm not in the mood to hear this.
It's not the best time to be talking about that.
I just said, I doubt it. I want to know who you're talking to on that fucking radio.
So I remember Navy SEALs with Charlie Sheen, like, your God doesn't help you now. Yeah. Like, that's the fact, man. That's
so. Anyway, everyone's getting on the helo. This old guy works for KBR, and he's a geo water guy. And older dude, probably 40, 50 pounds overweight, shouldn't be there, sweating. He's in a bad way, and he's shaking. And he gives me a key to go out to his trailer, and he's got a satchel in there with about $150,000 and a computer and whatnot. So I open it, take a look at it, come back, and I had to literally escort him to the helicopters and put him on the helo. I mean, he was shaking like a dog shitting peach stones. I
was surprised by some of the, and a lot of people asked, well, wasn't there military there? Well, I know there was a lot of the guys, even the Marines, like Lonnie Young, the corporal.
He's a reservist.
And he was a defense systems messaging analyst, I believe, is what I heard. There was no infantry guys there. He
was attached to the comm thing.
Right. And they were just there checking the servers or something that day. And they just happened to be like, what the hell? And I remember we going, like, you're a fucking gunfighter now. So. Well, I remember him screaming on that. There's even a video of him going, "All my time in the Marine Corps, I've never shot a gun like this," because the saw. He was on the saw most of the time.
He was a madman.
Yeah.
But when I wrote the award, what I knew about awards from the teams and Marines and junior enlisted guys never get credit for anything. So Lionel comes up to me a couple days later and he says, "Hey, that young corporal that got shot in the bullet, underneath the skin, all the way across, missed the spine and lodge over here. You can't do that twice in a million rounds."
Yep.
So Lionel says, "Why don't you write the award? You're the senior military." I'm a civilian. And he goes, well, you're the senior guy, so you're it. So
The award for who?
for
For
Corporal
Lonnie.
Young,
Oh, well, okay. Because I heard he was put up for the Silver Star.
I put him in for a Silver Star, and because you can't write, you can't get a Silver Star. There's no device on a Silver Star because without valor,
Right.
you can't even approach the write-up. And that's why one of my
I
big
did not know
things
that. That you did that. Okay.
Bronze Star with a V. You can give a Bronze Star without the V. And the Army started doing that down in Panama, and then it just kind of continued. So anybody with a Bronze Star doesn't have a V on it. I would be ashamed to wear that on my uniform, and I didn't get a Bronze Star. So anyway, stood his post, outnumbered 30-1, wounded, Audie Murphy type stuff. Because I know if I put him in for a Silver Star because he's a corporal and he's a young kid and he's just there, they're going to downgrade it to a bronze, and at the minimum, he's going to get a Bronze Star out of it, and he could probably get maybe promoted or something. I thought, hey, good on you, whatever. But the 4 El Sals, including El Cone's the guy that got shot through the face, Donald Rumfeld, he flew to El Salvador and pinned Bronze Stars on those guys in El Salvador.
No, I never heard that.
Yep. And you know what dear old white boy got after all of that?
Same as me, letter of recommendation or accommodation.
I got a letter of recommendation, and then a month later.
Accommodation, yeah. So
accommodation,
I got it on the wall.
Mine says some really nice things. It really does, from the State Department. And tried to kill me twice. Imagine that. But what was really interesting is a couple days before I'm going back, I'm going to go back and train up the new team and new team leader and whatever. Oh, by the way, and I don't know how it worked. I think I was making $650 or $7, and then the medics were getting. Remember how the pay
$750 for medics or some snipers.
Yeah, there was a kind of a graduated scale down, and I think if you were just a window licker, remember that term? I think those guys were at 6 or something. Like
600. Yep.
All of a sudden, I find out I'm going back, and remember the call sign Santa Claus was an ops guy. He was an aviation dude back at Moyoc, and he says, "Hey, don't shoot the messenger, but." The way that contract was set up, and I said, let me guess. He goes, yeah, everybody is at 600 a day straight across the board. I said, really? So I said, well, you do the math. I said, so you mean all that money back there, and Eric and Gary and all those guys, they can't cut an extra check for dear old white boy for an extra $1,500. I said, well, I'll tell you what. I said, when I took over down here, I said, you had people hanging off a bridge like Christmas ornaments. You couldn't even protect your own people. I said, my picture is on the cover of the Washington Post. And I said, because I am a good guy and because I'm loyal to my word, I said, I told Brian, I will do 6 months. And I said, I'm going to do this next 30 days, and my 6 months is going to be up to the day. And you can tell those people to go fuck themselves.
Mm.
And
so they still owe you money too.
And they still owe me money. And then another piece of it is right before I left, I was talking, the in-country manager, Brian, left, and there was a new guy, another team guy. And I said, well, look, Silver Stars, Bronze Stars, whatever, we don't get any of that. I said, so my guys have been in urban combat for a month. So according to the Army, they fired 1,000 RPGs and mortars at us. Mm-hmm. I said, not one of my guys has a fucking scratch.
Well, I briefly mentioned this. I ran into a Viper pilot in D.C. about 10 years later. And long story short, he was smoking a cigar, and he goes, hey, you want one? And I said, yeah, I'll burn one with you, man. And then he's like, who are you with? I said, I'm not with anybody anymore. And he said he was a Viper pilot. And I said I was just doing a defense conference up in D.C. at the time. And he's like, what kind of dirt did you chew? And I was like, well, Mosul, here and there, Afghanistan. I just went over, and he's like, he heard me say Najaf. He's like, Najaf, when was that? And I said, well, I did a little window down there in 2004. That was about it. But I flew all over the country. And he's like, wait, was the Marines Najaf after? I said, no, the Blackwater one. And he's like, holy shit, I was there on station with you guys. I'm the one who was dropping the bombs. And it was a cool bro hug kind of day. And we started talking, and he said, yeah, there was reports of like 10,000, Mahdi Army supporters in the city, which is probably true, and about 1,000 insurgents or people that were trying to push and attack and just, organize against you guys at any given time. And he goes, and I felt helpless up there. And I was like, really? Because, from a ground perspective, you can't see everything that those guys can see.
I had no idea.
I've heard, numerous reports like that. And, I know a lot of people say, well, how many bad guys were there really? And we had a lot of guns there. We had a lot of people there. We had a company of Spanish troops, but they couldn't shoot anymore because what I had heard, and maybe you could. Madrid bombing had just happened, and the Spanish prime minister or president said, no more firing a shot. Because I remember when that Spanish sniper got on that 50 and fired, because I remember I was like, dude.
That was that next building over.
It was 800 meters, and I said, and me and Mookie were yelling, Blanco shirt, shoot that motherfucker. He's got an RPG. And he's looking around like he's scared to death. And then he takes the shot, and it was like, you hear this big shot. And then I remember them pulling his ass off the roof immediately. Yeah. And I remember trying to take the 50, and they yanked it out of my hands. I was like, God damn it. So we had all this firepower, but nobody could shoot anymore. And it came down to just the guys that were there.
Leadership.
Yeah. And a bunch of scared military people. One of the girls screaming on the roof that whole time. And apparently,
they were really young. They were all.
No, one of them committed suicide 10 years later because they said her mom said that she couldn't handle that day.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I'll talk to you about it later. But it really saddened me, and I was a little derogatory in the past about it. I was like, man, because I remember yelling at her. She's like, "How could you be shooting what are you shooting at?" And she's screaming, and I'm like, either be a part of the solution or you're a part of the fucking problem. So do you want to go downstairs? You want to go down? No, I don't want to go down there. I'm like, well, then shut your mouth. And then the stress from that moment, and it made me think differently about how people manage and deal with their stresses. Cause you don't have to be a tier 1 badass like you to just be able to handle stress. We all have our own breaking point. And that kind of, I was like, whoa, that woke me up a lot. Even though it was just another gunfight for us. It really just was, even though it was unique. And going back to Lonnie for a second, that's why I keep saying, like, there was something weird because they were canceling medevacs like crazy. The Anglo guys couldn't get medevacs. We couldn't get medevacs. And they were shutting them down. So that's when Hacksaw's like, I'm flying this kid back to Baghdad. We need more ammo anyways. And we don't know what's going to happen here. And I said, I'm not letting you go by yourself, Hack. I'm going with you. And so him and I flew. We decided, like, we can make it back, man. It's 100 miles, freaking 100 mile per hour, 100 knots, 100 feet. Let's get it on. And we'll strap Lonnie in the front right seat of the little bird, Blackwater 3.3. And then I said, well, we can't take everybody. We need to keep guns here. And he said, well, just me and you. And I was like, all right, I'll protect your left side. Because if something happened, if Hack got hit, we went down and we were dead. So me and Hack took off, and we hauled ass single-handedly back to Baghdad, dumped Lonnie at the cast. And I remember he was kind of losing conscience. He was good for a while. He was walking around, he was laughing, and all the next thing you know, he'd be kind of losing it. And then that bird, I had to hit him a couple of times to wake his ass up. And, because we tied him into the seat really hard so he couldn't move. We landed at the cast, and I remember hitting him on the chest when they put him on the stretcher. I said, hey, you're good, buddy. And he gave me a thumbs up. And that's the last time I've seen her. I've tried to find the kid. If you're watching this, man, give us a call. I'd love to talk to you.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
It would. And so I hear he's doing good in Kentucky. I think he's, some of my guys started looking for him. But anyways, we hopped over from the cast right over to Washington. It was right there. We reloaded up and right back down in there and jumped back into it. So, but I was like, why are they canceling medevacs? Because then all of a sudden, here comes Sanchez and his dog and pony show, which
I could see when Sanchez got out of the helicopter. I was standing right there on the stairs, the open end of the back, and he looked up at me, and then, and now we got lucky, and remember Hollywood and everybody, with the big chops and the big foo, and Sanchez, he just looked at me like I was lower than whale shit, like, who are you on my battle space? And I just thought, wow, there you go.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, the people that were there, though, like Hollywood, you constantly mention him. That guy was a trip, man. And I didn't know him from Adam's House Cat because, I was from an away team. But I remember, like I was telling you, I go downstairs and wash my face, and he's over there spiking his hair up, and I'm like, the fuck you doing, man? He's like, we're going to go out, dude. I'm going to look fucking good. And I was like, God damn. And I run back upstairs. And then when he's sitting there at night when it's kind of eerie, and,
oh yeah.
And then he's like, I wonder what it'd be like to shoot an AT-4 at the moon. Yeah. And everybody starts cracking up.
Hollywood didn't do
all right,
really
man, we're
well
making
with,
jokes.
Sleep deprivation. After about the second day, I was like, Hollywood, you need to get your head down. And
yeah.
But great guys. One poser, one okay medic, a couple of reconnaissance Marines. Goldberg, Goldberg Did you know he was in Beirut in '83?
Was he a Marine?
He was a Marine.
No, I didn't. I never met him except for that day.
Yeah.
So
Right after the Marine barracks blew up,
yeah.
he was on a Navy ship when they were sending 16 inchers over the top, and they were getting return fire on 155s coming out of Syria.
Wow.
So nobody was really a stranger to danger or whatever.
No,
but
not one bit.
And then I do remember every Friday, Man Love Friday over there. Every Friday we went to SF range and we do, check our zero, a couple of little test runs on the guns. We do a couple of drills because we didn't have a lot of extra training ammo. We just didn't. And it was hard to come by. And I'm, way down there. And every time I went to Baghdad, I'm begging and borrowing, trying to get this, trying to get that.
We do the same in Baghdad, even on the contract. I had to go beg and borrow from the Army guys just to get linked ammo.
So after this is all over, probably a week after, I forget who it was, and said, white boy, the best decision you made was to take us to the range and run those drills and run those guns every Friday. I said, that's kind of what I used to do when I was in the teams. I was, when I was a platoon chief, you got plenty of time to go work out or whatever, but at the end of the day, you should be honing your skills. And you can do it. I don't care, dry fire, live fire, whatever it is. But if you're a special operations guy, there's a good chance you're carrying a gun going there, and there's a good chance if it goes sideways, you're going to be using that weapon system when you get there. So you better know it inside out, backwards. And I made a few really good decisions, but there were decisions that I didn't really make. They were made for me, going back to those old Vietnam era guys. That battle routine of always doing a test fire and always doing your drills and always running your rehearsals live and always running. You got nothing else to do. You got 30 minutes, wait for a helicopter. You're rehearsing what you're going to do when you hit the ground. Yeah. And I think some of those lessons have been lost somewhere. I don't know. I've been out of the team for over 20 years.
That's why I laugh when a bunch of military guys call competition shooters gamers. I'm like, what do you think we're supposed? What do you think we're supposed to do before every mission? Game it, rehearse it, go over and over and over and over and over.
Like the Bin Laden raid. How many times
6 months.
do you think those guys ran that backwards, forward, inside out?
Had the engineers build an entire compound almost exactly the same as the house. Yeah, that's gaming the hell out of it. But again, that's necessary.
Just like Hacksaw, the guy that saves everybody's ass on that op is the helo pilot. If he goes into the wall and splatters that thing and half the team fucking burns to death, now you're going to do that up with half a team. And now how are you going to get all those bodies out of there?
Hack was the coolest, calmest dude I've ever seen in my life. And even in the briefing, he was just, like clockwork, man. Because there was a big briefing phase that we had when as soon as we got off the phone with you, we went over to the airfield and everybody sat there and just like laser beamed in, and he controlled it A to Z all the way to Najaf and then all the way out till we landed. And it was like just clockwork.
Do you know what his career looked like?
I knew, yeah.
Grenada, Beirut, Panama, Mogadishu,
Somalia. He was one of the lead Little Bird drivers in Somalia.
I mean, every little dirty war there was in the last 20 years.
He was perfect for that.
Yeah, and he was. That guy was in his element. So when you guys land the second time, he gets out of the bird, and I'm on the steps again. I got the sat phone. It's really my only lifeline, and I'm wondering, how was. And it was funny. There was talk of another group from Team 3 that was going to come down and do a QRF, and then they got waved off at the last minute, and then some SF guys showed up. But Hacksaw gets out of the bird, takes his helmet off, and he says, "God damn it!" He said, "As soon as I heard that," he goes, I knew you were going to be balls deep in this shit." And I said, we didn't start it. And he goes, I just did a flyby. He says, "It sure as hell looks like you guys finished it." So fast forward,
everything was on fire.
Yeah, I'm on that other contract, and Denny and Duke are there, Snake, and they want a little back brief on this thing. Everybody's heard all these stories, and I was there. So again, I told you I had a bunch of slides and just some pictures and talked about this and that, just how it all started, went down. The good, the bad, the ugly, whatever. And then out of the blue, there's Duke sitting in the front row, and then he just raises his hand. He goes, "So what was body count?" And I said, "Yeah, they were hauling off I said 350 whiskey and kilo." And again, in front of a room full of people that I don't know, he says, damn, white boy, that's some goddamn good shooting. And we're giggling about it like kids. And the people in the back row, they weren't laughing. And I really I didn't know how to fix it. And I really didn't care to fix it. It was like, okay, you people weren't there. You didn't see it. You didn't experience it. So, again, if you haven't walked a mile in my boots, you haven't earned the right to ask me jack shit. Don't ask me any questions if you don't want to hear the ground truth.
So when you say 350-ish bodies, that's what you guys tallied up?
That's what Big Army told us.
Big Army.
When it was done.
Yeah. Well, remember the CNN report? We got back to Baghdad. I remember watching it, and they said, I swear it was 27 people in Najaf died. That's when I was like, what the fuck? Because I've seen some cover-ups before, and there's reasons why they do that.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not going to get into that stuff, but there was, the bodies, again, that's where they're going out and doing, battle damage assessments afterwards, but that's not including the bodies that are taken by the Iraqis, because I know there's like the ceremonial aspect to that and everything else, but like they were dragging. I was watching
to get the body armor off the bodies and get their AKs.
Well, that's what they were doing. I mean, even through the scope, I'm sitting there seeing people grabbing guns and grabbing. They were sending on the east side. Remember that big field out there by the right of way, the antennas, the high line. There was a woman that was forced out, and she ran out there and grabbed a big ammo can off of somebody on one of the cars that we shot up that came out. There was a mortar team that went over by that warehouse. Remember, we were calling, hey, it looks like a mortar team. Looks like it's got a tripod that they're running inside. And they tallied up about probably 20 guys they saw running there. And then she came out, and when I was looking through the scope, I remember Carmine sitting next to me on the saw. And I was like, dude, you see this shit, man? And I was like, yeah. He goes, yeah, I see it. And meaning we both kind of felt like they're fucking using women to go out and grab guns. And then those kids on mopeds running by with ammo cans. And those are the luckiest fucking kids in Najaf, by the way, because I think everybody shot at their ass. And
I don't know if anybody ever hit them.
No, I don't think so. And if they did,
well,
they held on tight.
Where the building was, and then again, we talk about the lethality of 5.56 in a combat situation. It's just under 300 yards just to the road, and then the other side of the road, and then you've got that big parking lot, and then you've got that warehouse, and then. So, you got those guys on those back alleys, because there was that little reserve base that was over there, the ACDC camp or some shit. That's 750 yards.
Oh, yeah. I was pushing out that far, trying to.
But they got guys back there with PKs that are just, bop, 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 bop. So
there's a guy in a video and that you can see he's wearing a white shirt running across the street, and I hit him at 720 is what we calculated it at. And he went down. He stayed there the rest of the day, so I imagine he wasn't sleeping. But there was another guy, speaking of lethality, it's like if you hit him in the head, because there's a French documentary. Did I show you that video?
Yeah.
The guy with the RPG. He tried to come up and shoot at us, and then I remember his head popping up over that, and I smashed him right in the head. He went down because I saw the video 10 years later, and I was like, well, okay, that guy, he's dead. But there was another guy that was running at us, and Mookie's like, hey, guy next to the blue Mercedes, which we had mapped out like a range card because I didn't know what the fuck was what. And this guy runs out, and I shoot him. He falls face, dirt dives, and as fast as he dirt dived into the ground, like his face must have ground into the road, gets up and keeps running. And so I remember hitting him again, and I remember Mookie shooting at him. I think Eric was shooting at him as well, but he was about 300 meters out. He hits the ground again, rolls over, and then lays there, but then sits up, turns over on hands and knees, starts crawling, and we're running Mark 2.6, 277 grain ammo.
Yeah.
I was. And I send one right up his ass. He flattens out. And then he crawls and then turns over on his back. And I think that was my sixth shot. And then he sits up and then shot him again. And it was like, damn. So it's like, you never know what you're going to get out of these weapons.
I would just make the argument that if you would have had that
308,
308
yeah.
G3.
Well, a lot of people ask me that. They said, wouldn't you rather have a bolt gun or something? Like, yeah, but we'd probably run out of ammo. Because at least we could carry a lot of ammo. Because I shot about 800. I shot about 800 rounds.
Yeah, when I was on the phone with Eric, and so I think I told you this. So those guns that we had were those Bushmasters.
Yeah, that's
what
I was running.
Yeah, those are a 1 in 9. And when you run the 77 grain, because you need
a 1 in 7.
You need a 1 in 7,
and that's what my barrel was a 1 in 7.
Because your gun was different,
20-inch.
Yeah, our guns weren't. So here I am on the phone, Eric, hey, tell me about that, Black Hills 7, because back then it was still the Black Hills 77, no one had really heard of it. It was '04, early
Mhm.
'04. So this is new, shiny.
It
I
was the
said,
magic bullet, and everybody thought it was great, but it's
yeah.
like, look at your barrel twist, guys,
Well,
and
and
not many
they
people.
didn't have anybody back there who was a bullet head.
Exactly.
All they needed was a guy from an armory. It didn't have to be. It could have been from Pendleton or the teams or whatever that knew, what we're talking about. So I said, well, Eric, I said, I don't buy your guns and I don't buy your bullets, but I said those bullets that you bought don't work in the guns you bought. And I explained to him barrel twist, and I said, so we're shooting a 9 to 12-inch group at 300 yards with a red dot. I said the red dot's as big as a human at 300 yards. And he says, well, what? Tell me what we need. I said, here's a quote, and I don't know if anybody's ever going to remember this one. When I first went over there on that convoy security team, they had 4 national match M14 sitting in the gun locker. I said, I'd like, and he goes, no. I said, just give me 2 of them. I said, just give me 2 and a ton of ammo. No. Those are special. They're national match or this. I said, no, they're just good M14s. And I know that rifle pretty well. No. So I said to Eric, I said, well, if you would have given me 2 of those M14s that I asked for 3.5 months ago, I said, you'd still be stacking them up like cordwood.
Yep.
He said, so 308? I said, 7.62 by 51 NATO. Thank you very much. And I said, I don't care if it's an M14, an SR25, an FNFAL, whatever it is, G3. And then you guys flew down a couple days later with that G3. And I put a scope on it, and that was my gun for the rest of the time.
Oh, yeah?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I never got to blast anybody with it. So, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
But no, what I was most proud of is just that I got everybody out of there, and that was the big thing. So fast forward from that, I'm back in San Diego. I go talk to my buddy OB, retired Mass Chief. He and I went through Green Team together. We were West Coast guys together. We were in Blue together. And so I relay this whole story, a little bit, and we're sitting there drinking a couple of brown beers or whatever, and he's kind of like, wow, shit, that sounds pretty sketch. I go, it was sporty, So and he had ended up going to the stand as a Master Chief, and he was just a loggy guy, and he was running airflow and all that other stuff. Went out on a couple of gun runs or whatever, but never really, not knee deep in hand grenade pins, let's just say. But he was a great operator, great dude, a real cerebral guy. And he looks at me, he says, you know what's funny about all this? He said, if you would have done that on active duty, they would have put you in for a Navy Cross. And I said, well, and then I relayed, the whole story about, Silver Stars and Bronze Stars and all that shit. And he said the same thing because he was part of an awards board in the stand. And some of the write-ups from guys that were in the rear and the talk and whatever, mid-grade officers
getting Bronze Stars for never even touching ground.
You would have thought that they carried out the whole GWAT thing by themselves.
We had an ace commander on the boat in Cyprus, never left the boat and got a Bronze Star for their actions of the wing in country. That's I don't know how that's possible.
That's just so sad.
Yeah.
Just so sad.
I mean, remember what you had to do for a Bronze Star in Vietnam? Even a Navy Achievement Medal of Valor, where you had to freaking be in a pile of hand grenade pins, but
different time, different ideas,
which
whatever.
Sucks because combat's still combat. My son's going off here pretty soon. He's going to get shot at just like we did.
Yep.
And there's no difference then to there is now, except for who's running the show.
All bleed the same color.
That's right.
So,
well,
anyway, that's a lot of information, I think, in a very short amount of time for people to digest. Yeah. I just, again, going back to the whole mercenary thing, I've been called a merc and a baby killer. And like I told you, that time I went back to Pennsylvania, that always stuck with me, that, people are so quick to judge.
Yeah.
Just like the Monday morning quarterback, whatever. But if you weren't playing and you weren't there participating in a team sport, which is, whether you got 8 guys or 108 guys, and you're shooting guns and, you're on a 2-way range, it's a team game.
Yeah.
And I think that's lost on a lot of people.
Well, whether you're a gladiator or you're an NFL guy, all the people in the stands, guess what they're doing? They're judging you the whole time.
Yeah.
And the old quote.
And the man in the arena.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so
and that was Roosevelt?
That was.
Or Truman?
No, that was.
That was Teddy Roosevelt.
No, that was the Green Bay Packers coach.
Lombardi?
Lombardi.
I thought it was.
I could have sworn that was Lombardi.
I thought it was done before that by Theodore Roosevelt.
I could be mistaken.
In the arena.
They were both great, though. Both great. Whoever came up with it.
Well, Lombardi came up with luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And I think
That's right.
that
That's right.
is the one thing that maybe
I got his book somewhere around here. I'll have to read it again and see.
I thought,
well, so people know what obviously you were a SEAL Team 6 guy, but what was the teams you went through in your career?
well, I was a hard hat diver first.
That's right.
And then I went through
Hell of a job.
class 131, 1984. And then team 1 for 5 years, green team, and then blue team for 5. Then I went to language school for German, went to team 2, spent some time in Bosnia, and then I ended up on McRaven staff. So I didn't even know it at the time. I did 20 years on straight sea duty. I was having such a good time that I didn't even, so my only break was dive school, buds, and language school. And language school, learning German, it was the hardest thing I've done academically. So yeah, I did 20 years on sea duty.
How's German still?
It's sketch. Real sketch. Yeah,
I can't retain a damn language to save my life.
Yeah, who am I speaking German to? Denise's German is better than mine because she lived in Switzerland.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah, she's an awesome lady.
Yeah. Again, I'm the luckiest fucker on the planet.
Oh yeah.
And what are the odds of a knuckle dragger like me, getting hired as a carbine instructor for this event at Gunsight, and then all of a sudden, boom. Anytime that I was questioned about leadership or about, doing the right thing or trying to do the right thing or helping others, whether it's law enforcement or other operators or contractors or whatever, lessons learned or whatever, I always go back to, if I do this, what would the bullfrog think? Because...
And explain who the bullfrog is on the team, so a lot of people don't understand that terminology.
Dick Lyons went through training in 1943, class 2.
Class 2.
So I asked him, what was training like? And he says, well, you got to remember now, they're pulling Seabees and regular Navy guys, and there were some Marines that came across. It was totally mixed bag. And, Naval Explosive Demolition Unit, here you go. We're going to start this new thing. So they show up. They got about 60 some odd guys. So they put the old Navy boondockers on, long pants. They're in greens, I guess. Vero Beach, Fort Pierce, Florida. Mm-hmm. Down the beach and back. He said it was about a 5-mile training run. Deep sand, Florida, summer, hot, bugs, humid, whatever. Boots didn't fit. They didn't have, didn't have the right shit or whatever. So I guess about 30 guys just came back, took the boots off and said, fuck this, I'm not doing it. Next morning they show up and they got duck feet, and there's a boat that's a half mile out from the beach. And they're like, oh, okay, swim pairs, here we go. You guys go out, give your swim pair number to the boat, come back in, you finish right here. So the duck feet, they don't fit. Some guys get halfway out, say, fuck it, turn around, come back. So guys come out, come back. So now it's Wednesday morning, and I think Dick said they had 20 guys. And one of the master chiefs comes out, he's got a cigarette and a coffee cup, whatever, comes out. CB guy, who's part of the training cadre, says, okay, those guys, they no longer live in your world. Training starts today. You guys are class 2. Hit it. And they went on a training run. So that whole idea of that selection course, whether it's the Delta selection or green team or buds or whatever it is, it's been around, in one form or another and so they just did all the weeding out at the front end instead of letting people in the program and then weed them out, whether it's Hell Week or the Big Hump or the, whatever it is. So it's funny. And that's 1943. So when people say, oh, the attrition rate at buds is, 75, 80%. Oh my God, that's terrible. I go, no, it's perfect. That's the way that program was set up is it's designed for failure. And all they want are the people who don't fail at the end of it.
Yep.
So there's a lesson there. And whether it's 2-a-days down in Florida with your football gear on or whatever it is, those are, I think those are good programs. I think it gives you a good snapshot of who you are, whether you're a kid trying out for the football team or you're an adult trying out for a spec ops team or whatever you are. And those things, I think, really shaped me. Because I remember, like, the first day of buds, we're doing, we go over, we do that screening test, and we come back, and we're doing some sit and flutter kicks, and we're doing this. I'm like, oh yeah, it's like Diz Moore, it's like my old football coach. And then I think it was the very next day, it's like the second morning of buds. We did an hour, like a 90-minute, just a butt dragger, just a gruel. This is before breakfast.
Yeah.
You know, started at 4:30, ended at 6. And we're running the chow, and I'm like, okay, this is no fucking joke. These guys are going to put us through the ringer. And then you're just like, okay, you either cowboy up, you either get with the program, or the program gets without you. So, again, just my little story, Wednesday afternoon of Hell Week, we come back at lunch, and we're standing there. We got the boats on our heads or whatever, extended arm carry. We set the boats down. And one of the instructors, same thing, comes up. And we look over, and it's a big rectangle. And there's 100 helmets sitting there. And they leave them there.
Yeah.
And the instructor, he just says, take a look. He goes, those people no longer live in your world. They were quitters. They couldn't hack it.
I didn't love it as much as you did.
And I'm thinking, so anyway, when I meet Dick Lyons, I'm like, yeah, they've been doing this since 43. This is a very tried and true program.
Yeah.
So
that's what vettings and indocs should be, is attrition should be the mission. Because you don't want to get a guy in school and put $1 million into him and then find out 6 months later or even in Hell Week, you're still spending a lot of time and money at that point.
You haven't even got the bombs and bullets and rebreathers.
Right.
Here's another one. Do you know how they figured out how many, back in the day, they figured out how many guys make it through Hell Week? Because second phase was diving phase.
Right.
So the first phase chief and the second phase chief got together, because you have an open circuit, and then you had the old Emerson rebreathers. It was the amount of rigs they had. So if they had 24 closed circuit rigs and 24 sets of twin 80s, they'd get together Wednesday, Thursday over at the chow hall. They're drinking coffee, eating lunch.
My God.
And the one chief, and he goes, how many guys you got? And he goes, I think we're right at 30. He goes, the number's 24. So they needed 24 guys to go to second phase, because that's all the equipment they had.
So 6 guys were out of luck if there was 30. Yeah. See you later. That's hilarious.
Here for your audience.
We didn't have to deal with that because our dive school is separate from basic recon course, which is right there with you guys. Well, we still do amphib phase down in Coronado, but I'd be laughing because I'd see all the guys sugar cookied in chow, like in Hell Week, just standing there.
Oh, wobbly.
And we'd be like laughing our asses off at them, and it's a good time.
Yeah. So for your viewing audience, here's another piece. There was a class called the Dirty 30. I forget the class number. So this is 1976, end of 76. So Vietnam is over now. You got the big disaster, Saigon 75. So there's 30 guys that make it through buds that come back from the island, and they've got their greens on. They're going to Army jump school. That's the way it used to work back then. Same as when I went through training. They call everybody in right before lunch in the classroom. They go, okay, here's the deal. There's no billets. So you only have the UDT teams and then team 1, team 2. There's no billets in the teams for you guys. Navy's cutting down, war's over. So here's what we're going to do. You guys are going to go to lunch, come back, and make a decision. You can leave the Navy today. No harm, no foul. Thanks for showing up. Just go sign the papers, and you're no shit civilian by 1600. Or you can go to the fleet for a year, and then we'll try to get you back to the teams a year later. 3 of those guys that went to the fleet and came back on the Dirty 30 ended up being my instructors. And they were some of the meanest sons of bitches. They were still pissed off. But can you imagine going through 26 weeks of that bullshit? And then you come in and you're going to lunch, and they're like, hey, guys.
Back to the fleet.
Yeah, there's no slots.
So the rest of the guys got out.
The rest of the guys got out. I don't know how, I forget, it's really hard to track the numbers, but there weren't many guys. Most of the guys just.
Well, those are the 3.
Yeah. The Dirty 30.
Yeah. And they probably pass on a shit ton of lessons, as hard as it may have been.
But, so not everything's the way it seems. And then all that, the training's easy now. That place in Coronado, I don't care. It's 26 weeks. It's like doing 3 a days or 2 a days for 26 weeks. There's nothing easy about it.
No.
And it never will be.
I did hear something recently because I do a lot of work down there with the guys. And the rumor, I'm not sure if they've started it yet, but I know Big Navy came in because there is about a 70% attrition rate from what if I remember the numbers correctly.
That's about right.
And the Big Navy came in and said, this is bullshit.
Yep.
You need a 70% pass rate. And so they said, if you don't have a 70% pass rate with a new program, we are going to come in and take it over ourselves. That's what they're that's rumor mill. I'm not sure if it's true, so don't hold me to that.
Good luck with that.
Well, what if they force them? I mean, that's happening in the rest of the military in certain aspects, in certain areas.
What I feel bad for is
because they don't do what they're told, they're fired. You know, and they're going to put some asshole in charge that will do it. Which
it's just like
we got.
I've been hearing for the last 5 years they're going to start running women through buds, and
well, they already did one time, didn't they?
When's the last time you had a black eye?
It's been a while. I'll shut my mouth.
Okay. No, and then here's where I go with that, and you guys can cut and paste this. So somebody asked me that at one of I think it was at that Rotary Club. They said, "Hey, you know, there's some guy in the back," and he says, "Hey, Chief, now they changed the rules a little bit. You know, how long is it going to be?" And I said, "Well, there's an answer to that too. Well, Dick Lyons is in the front row," and he just looks at me and he's like, wave off. Like, and so I take a drink of water and I said, so let me give you an analogy here. I said, 225-pound frog man, got my M60, 600 rounds, my vest, plate front and rear, pistol, 3 rounds, 6 quarts of water, maybe 4, pistol, 3 mags, 2 pop flares, water, couple of smoke, couple of frag. We're looking at, and a helmet. We're looking at 90 pounds of gear, which is still less than it. And that's no rucksack. That's no food, no comfort, nothing. That's just bombs and bullets, just coming down the rope or whatever and going to do it. So 225-pound frogman, 90 pounds, less than half your body mass index. You can survive, and it's going to pay some hell on you, as you and I both know. Mm-hmm. Ronda Rousey was fighting in the UFC at the time. And I said, okay, let's just call her the toughest chick on the planet, walking around weight 160 pounds. I take 90 pounds and put it on her frame, and she's jumping in and out of trucks and down fast ropes and swimming 1,000 yards and jumping out of airplanes at 24,000 feet. And I said, you think the VA's got a problem now? So we're dealing with 1 million years of evolution. Her knees and her pelvic structure and her back, she's designed to deliver babies. She's not designed to wear that kind of kit. She'd be, I would say 150, 160 pound chick. And I'm sure there's some swimmers, collegiate swimmers, water polo, lacrosse players. Some of those girls are in great shape.
Oh yeah.
Young women, but you put 90 pounds of combat gear on them. Let's see what happens. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a horrible experiment to even.
Yeah, not in white soft or any of that stuff. I mean, there's some badass women in the world, as you know.
Check out my plan. They go through buds, you pin it on, you send them out to Langley, they go through the farm, then they go to language school. So now you've got a chick that's physically fit. She's got some tactical understanding, and now she speaks a language. Now she understands the dark side, the intel piece. So now you can take her and pose as man and wife or whatever, go to an embassy or go to a foreign destination and collect and survive. You and I show up at the embassy anywhere, U.S. embassy, anywhere on the planet, they instantly know you're a former action guy. And you're not going to go anywhere in that country. Yep. You're burned the minute you get off the airplane.
Yep.
So I think that would be the way to go for those.
There are certain units that are doing that now.
Yeah.
I know some females that are
and they're shit hot.
They're free fall. They're HAHO qualified. Yep. They're combat divers. They're snipers. But they're doing that job. Yeah. They're doing the intel side.
They shouldn't be kicking doors. Yeah. I don't think.
They have the capabilities to take care of themselves. They're resourceful. They're smart as hell. The thing about it is, like, when I think the whole bitch and complain about, well, women should be in and they should have a fair chance. It's like, look, they do. And they are there. The problem is the ones that are there doing it don't scream out loud and say, look at me. And so that's the problem with the world, is everybody wants attention. Everybody wants to demand respect. It's like, well, first off, you don't get to demand my respect, first off, because I only respect respectable people. And so those people have earned that, and they're in those jobs, and you'll never hear about them. You'll never see them. And those are the people that are like, in my book, like, fuck yes. It's the ones that are the G.I. Jane concepts that are trying to make a big deal out of it. It's like, look, just put foot to ass and do it and get through it. And then if you go into that world, like some of them in the intel world, that's where we need them. But it's hard strapping 90 pounds to your body as a 225 pound guy.
Yeah. I mean,
exit weight's what, 360 to 390 on an aircraft for me. And that's not fun.
I got
as a 6 foot guy. Yeah, I think we all do.
And everybody that I know that stayed in for 20 some years or whatever, we're all jacked up, knees, hips, lower backs, shoulders, whatever. And I don't, and the guys that I know, former teammates, none of, Van's getting both knees replaced. He doesn't bitch about it. He goes, hey, I wore them out. I'm getting new ones.
Yeah. I've had 5
and I think
surgeries.
That's the attitude you have to have. So
yeah. Well, I think it's a good place to segue here into some other conversations later. If you were to give a new frogman from I guess we're old school now, right? From an old school perspective, what's some advice that you would give some of these newer guys coming in that want to do and be an action guy?
Just take care of yourself, whether it's, the sports medicine, the kinesiology guy. Listen to those people. Look at the programs from 30,000 feet and just say, maybe running in jungle boots for 20 years isn't the best thing. And there's all kinds of resources out there now, and they've changed the way they run PT down there in Coronado.
Oh, yeah.
They've changed a lot of things for the better. And listen to the people, the people who don't know should listen to the people who do know. So whether you bring in these sports medicine guys or former action guys, and they'll tell you, this kind of stuff, you're doing tandem jumps from 24,000 feet or whatever you're doing. This shit's going to wear you out. You don't need 500 tandem jumps to know you can do it. More is not necessarily better. More is, most of the time, is just more. You're not going to gain anything doing 1,000 flutter kicks that you are compared to 100 flutter kicks. So
No, that's a good advice. I definitely learned that the hard way because I've gone to docs and afterwards and go, hey, how do you fix me? How do you get me back to being where I feel like I'm 18 again? They're like, yeah, they laugh, right?
Yep.
It's the same thing with like I was telling you about the EXO sports performance programs, which we have a great relationship with those guys, and the tactical performance rehabilitation programs for soft guys. And of course we all go in there. The young guys, they're already into this stuff, especially if they've been to college or they've played athletic. I mean, even in high school now, there's a high degree of knowledge that they're giving these kids that are in the biomechanics space. They're talking about how the eyes work. They're saying, hey, take care of yourself. We're gonna pillar prep our warm-ups instead of just making you sprint on the field right out of the gate and do it cold and tearing muscles. So they're doing really well with that. And then the older guys that are like, I don't need that shit. Like I was definitely that way. It's just push, go as hard as you can. And then you go into these guys and they say, well, hey boss, we can't make you do this. Okay. That's not going to happen. You're about to do this with your mobility and stability problems you have. So what we can do is we can make you go a little further before you drop off.
Kick the can down.
And that's the last thing you want to hear, So I agree with you 1,000%. Like go back to the young guys that are getting in right now. It's like my son. I'm like, take care of yourself, man. Eat right. If you want to do what we did and do it 10 times better, 100 times better than we did it, then take care of yourself.
My buddy Mikey Lou, great dude. He used to always say, top fuel dragsters don't run on 87 octane. If there's one thing, stay off the booze, stay hydrated, and those kind of hand in hand, and really, really think about what you're putting in your body and think of it not as food, but it's fuel. That's key, I think. And one of the reasons I've lasted this long is I've always been kind of in like the burn clean thing. I was never a big meat guy, so it was always fish and turkey and chicken and sushi or whatever. And like I said, when you and I were talking, go to the SHOT Show, and you got guys that have gained 75 pounds. You can't even recognize these guys, Trav, and they're eating themselves to death.
And they're probably depressed on top of it because of it. It's not good.
And then I ask them, what's going on? Oh, my back, my knee, whatever. And that's when I give them the blister. I give them the blister poke, and, get rid of the food blister. And a lot of that won't hurt near as bad.
Yeah. But, it's still, remember, it's if somebody calls you fat and you literally tangibly, like medically diagnosed it's not an insult. It's just a fact. But it's, what did you call it? A
food blister.
That's right.
Blister
food blister
caused by food.
Yeah.
So
yeah, take care of yourself.
There you go.
Yeah. And that'll set the stage to where when you do get out, you're in this good momentum.
Yeah.
So when you do get in a shitty breakdown, hit rock bottom, depression, whatever a lot of guys do, I know I've had my dark times, you're able to pull through it and not continue to fall off that ledge, you know, like a lot of these guys do. Well, dude, it's good to see you after all these years. It's just awesome. I'm still tickled pink over it, but
funny how shit works, huh?
it's
Can't make
everything
this up
happens for a reason. And I've, you know, at certain times I go, no, you manifest your own reality. And maybe we did, you know, in some way, shape, or form. But then there's also that chance or that luck, like you talk about, like frogman luck and, you know, recondo luck. We all have that. And, but at the same time, it's like, I don't give a damn how fast you are. When your time's up, it's up. And, you know, and we're still sitting here with our fingers and toes. And I think to be able to share the memories and the history of other great men and women around the world that make the world a little bit better place. You know, I'm honored to know you, brother. So
Absolutely.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah. Right on. Cheers.
Cheers, buddy.